Hey YouTube, Styles by Nina. Hope everyone is doing well. I know y'all like, when are we gonna finish? I started another book last night, The View of the Hebrews. I just felt bad that I haven't came back to finish William Cooper. So I'm gonna try to get through as much as I can of chapter 6 while I have the time and the attention span. So we're picking up in chapter 6, page 135. The PDF, page 139. If you have any kind of program that you're using for your PDF, I use the Foxit Reader. Brig General J.L. Jelenic, Senior Army Officer of the Pentagon National Guard Bureau, has admitted, "I know of no state that did not have some form of these exercises within the last year." Today, the Cable Splicer Handbook is composed of 6 loose-leaf 3-ring binders that merely an outline for the impending takeover and destruction of our Constitution. The 6th Army used the term Cable Splicer for the name of the operation, but it has not revealed the name of the operation in the other military areas within the U.S. Give me one moment. On page 4, paragraph 10, on public information, the instructions state, "As a means to prevent adverse publicity or misleading psychological effects in regards to coordinating, planning, and conducting this exercise, all military participants involved will perform such duties in civilian clothing when exercise-oriented activities are conducted at law enforcement facilities. In the event inquiries are received regarding this exercise, the response should be limited to identifying the activity as a continuous joint law enforcement military liaison effort and a continuation of coordination established last year." On page 6, security guidance is explained to the effect that if anybody asks any questions, limit the information that is given out on the basis of it being in the interest of national interest security. Now, in the festivities celebrating the success of completion of the exercises, General Stanley R. Larson, the commanding general of the 6th Army, stated, "The most serious challenge facing all of us will be the challenge of discharging our legitimate responsibilities. For a significant portion of a society at large is likely to regard us with suspicion and to question, even challenge our authority on the basic assumption of our profession. Part of this challenge we must be prepared to deal with a potentially dangerous portion of our society, which in truth could well become the domestic enemy." The manual includes instructions on operation of confinement facilities, handling and processing prisoners, including searching, transporting, feeding, housing, and handling of the special class of persons called detainees. The plan also specifically includes a preposition for confiscation of privately owned weapons and ammunition. Sounds like what's going on today. Files on potential prisoners. The Army has over 350 separate record centers containing substantial information on civilian political activities. Virtually every major Army unit has its own set aside from this. The 5th Army of San Antonio has over 100,000 files of its own. The overall operation command post is a domestic room at the Pentagon. There are 25 million cards on individuals and 760.000 on organizations held by the Defense Central Index of Investigations alone. And this information includes political, sociological, economic, and psychological profiles. All this type of information on 25 million Americans. Since 1970, local, county, and state police forces all over the country have undertaken crash programs to install various kinds of computerized information systems. A large portion of this is being paid for by the LEAA. Beginning in 1970, Congress and the Joint Chiefs of Staff ordered the destruction of all these data banks, but they were not destroyed. All the outlawed collection is now located at Mount Weather, Clark County, West Virginia, and similar Pentagon facilities designed as adjuncts to the President's emergency powers under the executive orders. The cards of specialized persons to enforce the cadre, what is that supposed to be called? I don't know. Of specialized persons to enforce this plan are found in the U.S. Army Reserves Military Police POW Command at Livonia, Michigan. Mr. Finneran of the 300th Military Police POW Command at Livonia told me when I called him from the Federal Information Center at Houston that the camps in the command were for foreign prisoners of war and for enemies of the United States. I asked him if enemies of the United States included U.S. citizens. He became very angry, wouldn't deny it, and referred me to a very sinister individual at the Army Reserve facility here, and referred me to here at Houston, who I talked to, who explained to me that the prisoners were called inventory and internees. He would not deny that the camps were for U.S. citizens. I called the Pentagon, spoke with the defendant there, and then with the Provost Marshal for the 5th Army, and do you know what? Not one of these persons would deny that the system was for U.S. citizens. The Provost Marshal for the 5th Army, when I mentioned the names of all campsites, said, well, at least you've got that right. The names of the detention facilities that I gave him were a list that I had acquired from the Ozark Sunbeam. That list of names was the same list of facilities designated under the old Detention Act of 1950 as emergency detention centers. But there is only one problem. That act was supposed to have been repealed in 1971. After some research, I found out what the problem was. One congressman, when the hearings were held for the repeal of the Emergency Detention Act, mentioned that there are 17 other bits of law that provided for the same thing. So it didn't matter whether they ever repealed the Emergency Detention Act. The public was in fact tricked by the Congress of the United States. Here are the designated sites tucked away in the Appalachian Mountains of central Pennsylvania. Is a bustling town of approximately 10,000 people. 15 to 20 years ago, it was a sleepy village of 400. Allenwood, Pennsylvania is linked to New York City by Interstate 80. It takes up approximately 400 acres and is surrounded by a 10-foot barbed wire fence. It now holds approximately 300 minimum security prisoners to keep it in shape. It could hold 12,000 people from one day to the next. 30 miles from Oklahoma City on US 66 is El Reno, Oklahoma, with an approximate population of 12,000. Due west 6 miles from town, almost in sight of US 66, is a complex of buildings which could pass for a small school. However, the facility is overshadowed by a guardhouse which appears to be something like an airport control tower, except that it's manned by a vigilant, ununiformed guard. This is a federal prison camp or detention center. These camps are all located near superhighways or near railroad tracks or both. The federal Prosen prison at Florence, Arizona could hold 3,500 prisoners. It is presently kept in condition by approximately 400 legally convicted prisoners. Wickenburg, Arizona is famous for its municipal airport, which was once government-owned. It is now occupied by a private party. It is rumored to be capable of being taken back by the federal government without notice. Now, there are a couple other of these facilities which are probably existing under the same arrangements. This particular rumor of instant taking back without notice has existed for about 9 or 10 years. The only way it can actually be established is by looking at the local contract for the Wickenburg Municipal Airport itself and the parties that have possession of it. As I mentioned previously, these names were ratified by the Provost Marshal of the 5th Army, who is in charge of the 300th Military Police POW Command. He is the one who verified them. He said, as I mentioned before, well, at least you got that right. Some of the other locations are Tule Lake in California, now in private hands. It can be retaken without notice. Some of the others, we have Mill Point, West Virginia. I couldn't find a thing on Mill Point, but in that area we have all kinds of prisons. Among them are Alderson, West Virginia, a woman's federal reformatory, Lewisburg, West Virginia, a federal prison, Greenville, South Carolina, in Greenville County is now occupied by the State Youthful Offenders Division. Even that is a mystery to the people of the area. At Montgomery, Alabama, we have a federal civilian prison camp at Maswell Air Force Base. Now, does that sound right? There's one at Tucson, Arizona, David Munson Air Base. In Alaska, we have Elmendorf at Ilsen Air Force Base. And that brings us to a facility in Florida called Avon Park, Florida. I sent a representative to see what was at Avon Park. He found the Avon Park Bombing and Gunnery Range, which is also listed as the 56th Combat Support Squadron of the U.S. Air Force, which is also listed as the Avon Park Correctional Institute. No one is being permitted entrance, and probably there is no overfly permitted because it is a bombing and gunnery range. This was one of the places ratified by the Provost Marshal of the 5th Army. In 1976, as well as on March 20th, 1979, I went to the Sheriff's Department in Houston to see if our local Sheriff's Department had been infiltrated by these plans. Well, it appears so. I was put in contact with a Lieutenant Kilgen, who is in charge of some secret unit in the department. I asked him if he had participated in military training or in training with military personnel here in the Sheriff's Department. He denied it, and when I asked him if he would testify, so on the oath, he became angry and stated, You are just an ordinary citizen. I don't have to tell you anything. I later discovered that Lieutenant Kilgen is the ex-director of the Houston branch office of the U.S. Secret Service. Now, where does his money come from? The area is administered by the Houston-Galveston Area Council. In this regional government plan, each federal region is divided into state clearinghouses, and each state clearinghouse is divided into area clearinghouses. And for our area, we have the Houston-Galveston Area Council. It serves as a conduit for federal funds in two major areas, LEAA and HEW. Most everybody thinks this organization, the Houston-Galveston Area Council, is for the development of the area, the geographical area here in Houston, but it is not. It is for the development of LEAA and HEW projects. Now, this finds its counterpart in every community across the U.S. It provides for these agencies a liaison for intergovernmental communications, interaction, and coordination. We're going to stop on page 138. We're going to start back up at mental cooperation and takeover plans.